we are going to North Carolina, and we've got with us our good and longtime friend, Kenny Miller, joins us from North Carolina. There he is, Coach Miller. I'll say good afternoon out there. How you doing, Kenny?
I'm doing great. Good morning, Riders.
There we go. I love it. Good. You know these two guys. We got with us Gene Mikowski and Mike McCullough. Kenny, before I get into the football questions, the whole province and Rider Nation wants to know, how are you doing? How are things down there?
Things are going great. They really are. We're doing well. Maureen and I are living a good life here in Asheville, North Carolina.
I missed you when she was up here this summer, but we did have a good visit, which I'm sure she mentioned to you, and I'm glad things are going great. Kenny, you've got a big place in Labor Day Classic lore. You won some. You came back in 2011 for your first game and won big over the Bombers that day. What are your best memories of Labor Day Classics as we get ready for Sunday's game?
You know, really, when I think about the Labor Day game, I have to go back to the Grey Cup championship year. And I think we're down by a point late in the game. We're marching the ball, and we're getting ready to position the ball to kick a field goal. And Kent Austin whispers in my ear, "What do you think about running a draw play?" And I said, "Good idea." We called the draw play to Kerry Joseph. Winnipeg blitzed. They had a person in every gap, but we blew them open. Jeremy O'Day and whoever else was in there, Mike Abu probably, and split him, and he ran into the end zone for a winning touchdown. So that was a tremendous win for us in that Grey Cup year.
That's everybody's favorite memory, I think. Gino, what do you remember? You were on the field for that play. What do you remember about it?
Yeah, pretty much as Coach Miller mentioned, it should have been stopped. I mean, they had blitzed in every gap. It's the defense you'd want to call if you knew we were running a draw, but Kerry slipped through, and then he used his speed. There was obviously man coverage in the secondary, and so there's lots of room back there. And then the crowd goes wild. It was awesome. It was a great. I felt the tension in the stadium that day. There's a lot of back and forth, and kind of the last team to have the ball type game, and that turned out to be true.
You know, a lot of guys say, Kenny, that game set you on the path to win the Grey Cup in 2007, that there was no looking back. I think we've talked about this before, you and I, but let's talk about it again. Was there one quintessential moment in that season where you knew this was a special group that could win a championship?
Well, yeah, you know, I think as of that game, our team really did come together nicely and really gelled from that point forward. Although we did lose the Banjo Bowl the following week, but we recovered from that and we were able to go forward and be successful.
How much are you following this year's Roughriders? How much are you able to follow this year's Roughriders from Asheville, North Carolina?
I have. I've watched nearly every game or parts of every game. On ESPN3 or regular TV ESPN or ESPN Plus. So I've been frequently a fan.
Well, Craig Dickinson's a big fan of yours. He's told me many times. You guys were on staffs together. Tell me what you like about the job that he's done here with these 6-3 Riders.
Well, first of all, I just want to give him a lot of congratulations. He and Jeremy, I think, Jeremy O'Day, they've done a tremendous job of putting this team together. And I think, you know, when Craig coached with me, he was a high energy guy. He was always on task. And I think he brings that kind of a feeling to the team, his high energy. Yeah, I know he's organized, and I know that he is a player's coach. I think that he is maybe using some of the things that we used when we were together to help the team be successful and grow together as a unit and really develop a synergy.
Well, can I ask you your coaching philosophy? Both Gene and Mike have mentioned earlier today that they're coaching young kids now. They're not at the pro level. Maybe one day that they will be. But Craig said to me, and you've read this quote when I put it out, that he said, Ken Miller is a transformational coach. I said, you need to tell me what that is. And he said, it's a guy that makes his players achieve things they didn't think they could do. And in the end, they thought they did it on their own. And they don't give the coach credit. And he goes, he said, Kenny never wanted the credit. I don't think Craig Dickinson wants the credit. But how do you go about doing that?
I think the real key to that is to have the players take ownership. You know, give them opportunities to exercise leadership and have input into what they're doing, and they take pride in that and being able to buy into what they're doing. And I think that's the biggest thing, intrinsic motivation for them to take pride in what they're doing and have a great say in how they go about it.
Does that
integrity?
Does that roll into the fact that so many of your players, Chris McKenzie for one that was in here the other day, I remember him saying I would lay down in traffic for that man. Does that all roll into why the players would go through a wall for you, that all those fundamentals?
Well, I think so. I think that when you show players respect and give them meaningful input, that they show that respect in return, and I really think that helps with their intrinsic motivation.
Do you guys have any questions for Coach Miller? Or you just want to listen to him talk all day?
Oh, I could listen to him talk all day with that baritone voice. Hey, Coach, how's it going?
Hey, Mike, I'll tell you what, it's good to see you and Gino there.
Your two favorites are here, yeah.
I was really stoked yesterday when they told me that you two were going to be there. So that's super.
Kenny, your thoughts on a few things CFL related. One, CFL 2.0. I reached out to you in the summer, or I guess it was the spring when this came up, for your thoughts. But tell our viewers now what you think about this Mexican-European experiment in our league.
I think it's a good thing. I think that we're trying to build the game of football, and I think the greater exposure we can get it and the broader scope of people that we can include, the better. I don't know just where that stands now as far as the CFL is concerned, but on a general basis, I think that I approve of that.
How about the game itself? We've got a new commissioner in here who's been new since you left the league, but he's tweaked the challenges, he's tweaked the video review system, a few minor rule changes to get the game. I really like where it's at right now. How do you feel about CFL football as you're watching? Because I know you're a student of the game.
Well, I tell you, it's fun to watch the game and to see the games. I think maybe one thing that I did not like that I saw was the cancellation of a game in the third quarter. I know that went in favor of the Riders, and certainly that's a great win for the Riders. But when you think back on this season and you think how many games just in this one season alone have been determined, in the fourth quarter, and especially in the final minute or 2 minutes of the games, I think that maybe he'll want to rethink that particular rule. If you go back to 2007 in our blackout game against Edmonton, if you call that game at the blackout, that's an L for us, as I recall, and it ended up being a W. And I remember when I was in Toronto, we had the big Eastern Seaboard blackout, and we waited 2 days to play a game with Edmonton. So I think any possible way games should be completed for the total of 60 minutes.
By the way, the latest on that is the league issued a statement and said they're willing to revisit that rule that they brought in, the new weather protocol. I think it's for all the exact same things that you've said. I should remind our viewers, by the way, that they can ask questions as we roll along here on the Facebook string or the Prairie Mobile text line, 840-8777. Jeff Krieger writes in and says, who was Ken's funniest guy in the locker room? Who was the funniest guy, Kenny, in your days with the Riders?
Oh boy, I'll tell you what, it might be a tie between the two guys you have sitting there.
Well, okay, I'll say for me, but Gino, the guy spoke once every 6 days. Of course, when Gino did speak, they were gems.
Yeah. I might disagree with Coach on that
one. Common sense,
maybe
humor,
laughed at,
and pretty subtle. Not belly laugh guys, but the guys that saw humor in a lot of things.
Well, the first name that popped into my head when I said that was Scott Schultz.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, he says, could you imagine a conversation between John Chick and Ken Miller? It's a staring contest. By the way, Kenny, with John Chick and any of these guys that went on to the National Football League and seen the things that they did, what does that do for you as a guy that kind of helped mentor them, speaking of John Chick, along the way to see them ascend, not just win in this league, but go to the NFL and have success down there?
Really, I think it's every young man's dream, every young man who plays football, to want to compete in the NFL. And so I have a great sense of pride for those players who were able to go on and compete down there. John was a tremendous player for us, and what a great man of character, strong person in the locker room, tremendous performer on the field. So really, I'm very proud of him, and what a great thing when we have players who are successful at that level.
Paul Bernstrom writes in and says, what do you think of the new stadium? Have you had an opportunity to check out new Mosaic Stadium?
I haven't been in. I was there during construction, and I have seen it from the outside, but I have not been inside the facility.
When I did have coffee with your wife a couple weeks ago, she said Kenny would come back and coach if he had the opportunity. So are you kind of coaching in your mind as you're watching these games, Kenny? I mean, is it true you wouldn't mind being back on the sidelines?
Oh, nothing really takes the place of being able to be in the locker room, be in the coaches meeting, cooking it up, coming up with the plans, and then seeing those plans come to fruition. There isn't anything quite like that in this world. Just a couple of weeks ago, my son coaches a collegiate baseball team in Washington, and I was there, and he was talking about me missing the game, and I said, or doing art and that sort of thing. I said, it's fun to do, but it's not like hitting fungos. It's not like calling plays.
You did a couple of years ago have a role with the Alouettes, if I'm not mistaken. How did that come about?
Well, I don't know exactly how it came about, except that Cavis called me one day and asked me to come up and talk with him and be around and be a consultant for them for the remainder of that season. And so I did that. I went up there, had really no responsibility, no power. And so I observed and would talk with him periodically. I sat in offensive meetings and really just observed, and when asked questions, I gave an opinion.
Here's a good last question. It came from Ken Stelmach on the Facebook feed. Ken, what was your best moment as a head coach? And we'll talk about the Rider era.
Wow. My best moment. I think as I have to go back to a game, and I think the game, the Western Final that we played in Calgary when the weather was so beastly over there, and we were the second place team, and so we were the visitor there, and it was a dogfight through that game, and we were able to score late in that game and win it and go on to the Grey Cup. I think. That is one of the great moments, along with winning the Grey Cup in 2007, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that we were able to be in the Grey Cup in 2009 and 2010, and just happened to come up a little bit short, but I'm very pleased with our achievement in those years.
I was thinking about you the other day. 3 years as Riders head coach, finalist for Coach of the Year, all 3 years. Kenny, hopefully we can do this again. Say hi to Maureen. She poked her head in the door behind us. And good to see you, my friend. I appreciate the time today.
Rod, thanks so much for having me on. And I just want to say thanks for having those other two guys there today. It's great to see their faces.
Take care, Coach.
Absolutely.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.